the last thing you want to see.
They gave up on me.
One of the most unique stories in the NBA has officially taken a crazy turn that we could have never expected. Isaiah Thomas is officially back, and this is the latest in a very unique storyline that includes the former Mr. Irrelevant. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. My Super Bowl picks that I made in my content with the Patrick Mahomes free square didn't hit, but the one that I posted onto my story did hit, and you guys let me know how much money you made in my DMs. And now that the NFL season's over, we're officially directing our attention to the NBA. I give away my picks for free at TheFlightmike on Instagram, and right now when you sign up for Prize Picks, use promo code TheFlightmike to get up to a $100 deposit match when you sign up on Prize Picks. Or you can just use my link in the description down below. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Isaiah Thomas had one of the most surprising rises in NBA history, going from the last pick in the 2011 draft to his first All-Star appearance in 2016. Isaiah Thomas became the second player ever to stand at 5 feet and 9 inches and make the All-Star team. But as improbable as his rise was, his 2016-17 season became the stuff of legends. He had an MVP-like season, carrying a young, scrappy Celtics team to the best record in the East. In late December, he scored a career-high 44 points, rallying the Boston Celtics to an overtime win over Memphis on just 16 shot attempts. He then topped that 10 days later with 52 points, including 29 in the fourth quarter, the highest scoring quarter in Celtics history, in a thrilling victory over Miami. He was named an All-Star for the second consecutive season, was named to an All-NBA second team while finishing 5th in MVP voting. His 28.9 points per game ranked 3rd in the league, and he broke John Havlicek's Celtics record with at least 20 points in 43 consecutive games. But before the playoffs began, Thomas had to deal with an unimaginable tragedy. His sister, China, died in a car crash on the eve of Boston's playoff opener. Fighting through grief, Thomas scored 33 points in Game 1, and although they lost the game, Boston won the series in 6 games. In the second round against the Washington Wizards, Thomas scored 53 points in an overtime win in Game 2 on what would have been his sister's 23rd birthday. It's the second most points by a player in Celtics playoff history. In Game 7, Thomas scored 29 points to go along with 12 assists to help the Boston Celtics win the series and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. But in the next round against the Cleveland Cavaliers, IT's fortunes would soon turn for the worst in a development that would impact the rest of his career. In Game 2, Thomas had to miss the second half with a hip strain during Boston's blowout loss. The next day, the Celtics announced that he'd be out for the rest of the playoffs. Boston stood no chance against LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and the rest of the Cavaliers as they eventually went down in 5 games. Thomas is believed to have initially suffered a hip injury in a mid-March game against Minnesota, an injury that was only seen as a knee injury at the time. The injury forced him to miss a 2-game road trip, but he returned after that and played in 76 games that season. Thomas would re-aggravate that injury during the Wizards series and once again during the Eastern Conference Finals, and unfortunately this hip injury would completely sabotage his career. Thomas had only 1 year left on his 4-year, $27 million contract that he initially signed as part of a sign and trade to the Phoenix Suns. While that contract made him one of the most underpaid players in the league, Thomas made it clear that he expected that to change. During the 2016 offseason that included the NBA's massive salary cap spike, he said that the Celtics better bring out the Brinks truck and said, "They're paying everybody else, I gotta get something." A request that wasn't that far-fetched considering the fact that at the time, Isaiah Thomas was quite literally the franchise cornerstone for the Boston Celtics. Bear in mind, this was before the time of Jason Tatum, and this is before the emergence of Jaylen Brown. During the 2017 offseason, Thomas said that he was okay with the Celtics waiting to give him his new extension during free agency in order to use their cap space to sign other free agents that summer. Little did Isaiah Thomas know that this would be a mistake. That same summer, he said that he was a max player who deserved the max contract and reiterated his Brinks truck comments. But in a move that rocked the NBA world, In late August, the Celtics traded Isaiah Thomas to the Cavaliers, along with Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and Brooklyn's unprotected 2018 first-round pick, in exchange for Kyrie Irving, who had requested a trade out of Cleveland the month prior. While the Celtics admitted Isaiah's hip injury had some part in making the trade, reports quickly emerged that revealed the team was significantly concerned about his hip. That concern soon shifted to the Cavaliers after Thomas underwent his physical, which is necessary for any trade to go through. The Cavs were so concerned with what they saw that they sought additional compensation after learning more about the extent of Isaiah's hip injury. If the Celtics were to refuse, there was a real chance that the hip injury would end up derailing one of the biggest trades in recent memory. Eventually, the Celtics added a second-round pick to the deal to appease the Cavaliers, but Cleveland maintained that Boston hadn't been fully transparent about the potential length of rehabilitation that Thomas was facing to get back onto the court. One thing was certain: Thomas had an injury worse than many believed. Reports surfaced before the season that Thomas could be out until the All-Star break, a significant blow to a Cavaliers team who would need him to chase a championship with Kyrie Irving officially gone. But Isaiah Thomas was a fighter, and once again, just like most of his career, he would beat out the expectations that were placed upon him. Thomas would check in for his Cavaliers and season debut in early January, and he played well, scoring an efficient 17 points in a Cavaliers victory. But his scoring inefficiency moving forward ultimately doomed his chances of success in Cleveland. After just 15 games of consistent double-digit nights, blemished by poor shooting numbers, the Cavaliers were officially out on Isaiah Thomas, trading Thomas to the Lakers and moving him from a title contender to an irrelevant team in the midst of a youth movement. His most memorable moment as a Cavalier occurred at the end of his last game, when LeBron James seemed to ignore him while celebrating a buzzer-beating shot to beat the Timberwolves. Thomas continued to average double digits in scoring off of the Lakers bench, but he underwent hip surgery that ended his season and his year from hell. Isaiah's future looked uncertain as he entered free agency coming off of surgery and an uneven season with two different teams. Eventually, he agreed to a one-year, $2 million deal with the Denver Nuggets, providing him with an opportunity to rehab his value on a team with playoff expectations. But this was a far cry for a player who went from a potential max contract to a veteran's minimum. Isaiah Thomas lost out on hundreds of millions of dollars because of this. Plus, on a team with young guards Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, and Malik Beasley, Isaiah Thomas didn't see the court much during the season. He only appeared in 12 games off of the bench and didn't appear in any of Denver's 14 playoff games. As a result, Thomas had to go back into free agency to find a team that would give him playing time. He found his next home with the Washington Wizards, signing another one-year prove-it deal to join a team with low expectations. He played in 40 games, including 37 starts, often scoring in double digits, but not in the same manner that he was when he was with the Boston Celtics. He averaged just 12 points and 3.5 assists per game during a largely forgettable Washington Wizards season, but he didn't get to finish the season in Washington. At the trade deadline, Isaiah Thomas was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers in a 3-team deal and soon after would get waived. A little over a month later, the COVID-19 pandemic ensued. Thomas was left unsigned for the remainder of the season. During that time, Isaiah Thomas underwent another hip procedure and said that he was ready to contribute again for an NBA team. But this time apparently was different. Thomas revealed that he was in a much better place physically than when he had to have his kids help him put his socks on. But the 2020 to 2021 season dragged on for months without a team signing him. Finally, in early April 2021, the New Orleans Pelicans came calling and signed him to a 10-day contract. Despite being out of the league for 14 months, Thomas said he was more than ready to go. Alas, the opportunity was short-lived as he only appeared in 3 games for the Pelicans, his only NBA action of the season. After the season, Thomas began speaking more openly about his hip injury and how it was affecting his career. During an interview on the All the Smoke podcast, he said that the Boston Celtics didn't reveal the long-term risk of his hip injury in 2017. And this interview is so tragic once you listen to it.
The only thing that I would have against Boston, you know, everybody hated Boston for what they did to me. It's a business, I understand it. I'm not tripping on it. The only I think they handled wrong was not explaining to me what the extent of my injury could be if I do play. That was the biggest thing for me that I dislike, because nobody gave me no insight. Okay, if you do play, this can happen.
We have to hear that, because if you tell us it's gonna be sore,
because it was a bone bruise. At the end of the day, it was a bone bruise. Like that's what they said. So if you're gonna tell me it's a bone bruise, I'm playing 10 times out of 10. Like I'm gonna figure it out.
I'm gonna get through that.
So that was probably the only thing that I wish they would have done different. And I would have really sat down and really asked those questions, like, worst case scenario, what could happen?
Thomas was once again unsigned as the 2021 to 2022 NBA season began, but instead of waiting like he had done the previous season, he went to the G League. In December of 2021, Thomas signed with the Grand Rapids Gold and quickly proved that he didn't belong at that level. Not because he couldn't play, but because he looked like the Isaiah Thomas of old. In his first game with the Gold, he scored 42 points in a statement to the basketball world that he could still play. Shortly after, the NBA came calling once again. The Los Angeles Lakers were granted a hardship exception as they dealt with multiple players out because of injuries and COVID-19 safety protocols. As a result, they had a spot for Isaiah Thomas, who they signed to a 10-day contract for his second stint with the franchise. In his first game back, he scored 19 points and gave teams more evidence that he deserved a spot on an NBA roster. He ultimately played in 4 games for the Lakers before his 10-day expired. Shortly after that, the Mavericks, who were also dealing with players out because of health and safety protocols, signed Isaiah Thomas to a 10-day contract. He only played in 1 game as a Maverick, scoring 6 points off of the bench. After the contract expired, Thomas went through another stretch without a team after he rejoined the Grand Rapids in the G League after the All-Star break. He wasted no time recapturing the NBA's attention. In 2 games back in the G League, Thomas scored 45 points before following that up with 46 points and 9 made threes. His G League stats across 3 games look like a my player in NBA 2K. The NBA couldn't ignore him for long. In early March, the Charlotte Hornets signed him to a 10-day contract, and he jumped in and contributed immediately with 10 points in his Hornets debut, which they won. Charlotte signed him to another 10-day contract after his first one expired, and in his first game after, he hit 4 threes in a row to help Charlotte rally past OKC for a victory. They eventually signed him for the rest of the season after cementing himself into their rotation as a reliable backup for LaMelo Ball. In 17 games in Charlotte, Thomas averaged just over 8 points per game while shooting nearly 40% on threes. But even after achieving modest success once again in the NBA, he went the entire 2022 to 2023 season unsigned. It was fair to wonder if his career was truly over even after hanging on with 10-day contracts in his early 30s. Earlier this season, Thomas said that he was staying ready and working out as he eyed an NBA comeback. And that brings us to recent news that broke this week that is a major breakthrough for Isaiah's dormant basketball career. Shams Charania reported that Isaiah Thomas is signing with the Salt Lake City Stars, which is the G League affiliate of the Utah Jazz. The last time he played in the G League, he played way too well for the NBA to ignore and ended up getting opportunities with 3 different teams that season. Now at 35 years old, Isaiah Thomas will try to do it again. After all this time, he still has the drive to keep going, which is understandable considering where his career went after experiencing a brush with stardom. From a financial standpoint, Isaiah Thomas has made over $35 million during his NBA career, which is nothing to sneeze at and is more money than most of us ever expect to see in our entire lifetime. But it has to be a hard pill to swallow knowing that a career-altering injury at the absolute lowest point of his life cost him an opportunity to make close to that amount in a single season. Since his final season with the Celtics, Thomas has played in just 109 NBA games across 5 seasons for 7 different teams. He has not appeared in a playoff game since Game 2 of the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, and that doesn't include roughly 6 minutes of action in Charlotte's play-in game in 2022. The odds were stacked against Isaiah Thomas when he entered the league as the last pick in the 2011 NBA draft, and they're stacked against him now as he enters his mid-30s. But now, this unlikely former MVP candidate will once again have his opportunity to play his way onto an NBA roster. Do you think Isaiah Thomas will be able to make it back into the NBA, or do you think the Isaiah Thomas cycle is about to repeat itself again? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.